morning, Jonathan. It's broken. Morning all over the place.
Broken.
And I am your consecrated host, Father Jeff, consecrated by holy orders.
I'm your consecrated host, Jonathan, consecrated by baptism.
Yeah.
I almost said Father Jonathan.
Father Jonathan. You know, the other day, I think I told you this. No, we did talk about that
The deacon?
last week. Yeah. Could be a deacon. Deacon in training. DIT. You're a dit.
Oh my goodness.
But many years down the road, perhaps.
Yeah.
Oh, it's another week, new week, the end of October already.
I know.
The end of October.
Next week at this time, we will be well entrenched into November.
Yeah, I mean, 2 months from this past Sunday is Christmas. 2 months. You know how quickly this is going to go? Boom. Because as soon as Halloween is over, like you're gonna walk into the store and they're gonna be playing Christmas music already. I mean, maybe not.
They've already been doing it, I think.
No.
Some places, yeah.
No.
Costco, they've got all their Christmas.
Oh, you've got the
out.
Christmas stuff out. Yeah.
The music,
all the decorations.
the music, they try to hold off on a little bit.
You're gonna really start seeing the commercials. I mean, I've already seen a couple that are Christmas oriented.
Yeah, I think maybe this year they're gonna get the start. I've seen. Black Friday, a lot of places are saying they are not opening.
Well, I mean, people have to think about what Black Friday looks like during a pandemic, and because you can't have crowds and crowds of people on top of one another, especially if places still have limitations on the number of people that they can have in social distancing and climbing on top of each other. And
I think even before,
it was bad to begin with.
Before the pandemic started really taking over everyone's life, I think some companies were saying they were just going to, in respect for their employees, not open, 5 p.m. on Thursday night.
Yeah, and it just gets so crazy.
It's just not.
I've never liked the concept of when Black Friday kind of became a thing. It was always kind of called Black Friday because people go shopping and da-da-da. But then the crazy competitions and contests and, you got to get here soon to get this and the doorbusters and blah, 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 blah. And it just breeds this crazy... I know some people love it. They live, whatever. That's so not me.
I've used it to get some cheaper gifts. However, it was never leaving and waiting in line and...
I don't want to deal with that many people in the store. I mean, my ideal is to, have the store to yourself. If I could be the only shopper there, I would love that.
Yeah, back when I was in college, because Houston has this huge mall, the Galleria, that's got...
I've been there.
Tons and tons of stores.
Yeah.
And it's, they've got a huge ice skating rink in the winter.
It's ginormous.
But
indoor ice skating rink because outdoors it would melt there.
I got used to going. I was like Tuesday at like 9 a.m. Tuesday morning, 9 a.m., 10 a.m. If I needed to go shopping,
oh, that's when you went.
I would go at something like that because I love being around people. I am 100% extrovert, but when I'm shopping and I'm in a place like that, I don't like people. I don't want to be around anybody. I don't want to see anybody.
Well, you have to, especially if you have a cart or a basket or whatever, and you're trying to maneuver through things.
I'm on a mission. When I'm shopping, I'm on a mission. I don't like just being around people.
I don't know if I'm a mission-oriented shopper. I kind of do like to. I'm the window shopper. If I'm going to go shopping, we're going to make it an event. So we're going to go and we're just going to look at everything. I probably won't buy anything. But I'm going, well, maybe I'll buy one or two things. But, I could spend just walking, browsing, whatever. That's why I don't want to have to...
If there's no people, then I'm okay doing that. If there's a lot of people, I'm just like, I want to get out of here.
And there's no parking at the Galleria. I mean, it's ridiculous. I've been there in November and when I visited. And if you go to the store... You are not going to find a parking space, and it's crazy.
No, even a Target out there. There's so many people in Houston, but we live in Omaha.
There is so many people in Houston. That's part of the problem.
Yeah. So no, we're getting in, and one of the things I was going to say earlier was, it seems like the older you get, the faster years go.
Time moves faster. I'm convinced.
However, that time after Halloween to Christmas usually is one of the fastest times of the year. It's just because it's one thing after another.
You're just in constant planning mode, getting things done mode, and then all of a sudden, bah!
Yeah, that it's fish fry season again.
It'll be interesting to see how the pandemic and social awareness and distancing and all these sorts of things, how that's going to change the course of things. I don't know. It'll be interesting.
It will be.
Yeah. Well, we have no saint today, Jonathan.
No saint.
No saint. Well, there's probably a saint, but not on the general calendar. So, and we didn't have one yesterday.
Well, here we are.
2 months to Christmas. Start the countdown.
That was a great episode. Thank you for joining us.
Have a great day. Our quickest. So we finished the Screwtape Letters.
We did.
And it was just a good reflection, I think. First of all, the Screwtape Letters themselves really focused on kind of the internal, personal reflection of how sin and temptation are at work in my life, or your life.
In my life, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Screwtape proposes a toast, kind of expanded that, and just kind of made us think a little bit about societal evil and how temptation can be inbred or embedded, that's the word I'm looking, embedded into a society. We talk about systemic injustice or systemic sin or communal sin or things like that. And that's a real thing. Those things are embedded in these things. So we kind of had a chance to think about not only the individual, but also kind of on the communal level. So I think last week we mentioned that we would turn our attention this week for these 4 days, just kind of leading up to the election and planning not planning to vote, but what do we use as our markers, or how do we even approach that from a faith perspective?
Got it. You sure you want to go into this?
Oh yeah, I'm ready to knock some heads.
But no, I think it, like you said, it's so important that we learn how to form our conscience. I think that's philosophy used to be taught, just that was part of curriculum.
Sure.
And that a lot of philosophy is learning how to think for yourself.
Oh boy.
And we talked about it last week with the Screwtape Letters, is that marketplace of ideas has become you got this one brand, and that's, if it's not that, get out of here.
Yeah, it is true.
And so the philosophy really, for me, helped me just like, there's like argumentative things that you can learn, and just the process of how to truly argue.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was when I taught the Intro to Ethics course to my high school seniors. It was that, I mean, that's one of the first
argumentative logic,
and how, what an argument is. And we talked a little bit about arguing before, that arguing is not fighting, but it is a rational presentation of ideas so that you can uncover the truth. But because we're broken and fallen human beings and sometimes tend towards manipulation and error, we there are these things called fallacies, and a logical fallacy is things we use to strengthen an argument, but if you really take a step back and look at it, it's like, that's not really part of the argument. So just to give you an example, one of the fallacies would be an ad hominem, against the person. That's an attack on a person. So it's like, we're talking about the merits of whatever, and let's talk about the merits of Jonathan as a co-host on this program.
Oh, good grief!
And Jonathan is
he's
making his case why he is an excellent co-host. And I said, Jonathan, whatever. That's a stupid vest that you have on. I am attacking his person, and that vest has nothing to do with his co-hostiness.
That's true.
You're not your. So it's an ad
hominem. I hope it's
attack.
not really. Oh, it fits a little funky. But it has no bearings on my qualifications.
Nope. it's a personal attack against the person. So if you just like, oh my gosh, the man can't even talk right, he's just a big stutterer. Well, that really has nothing to do with the argument or the thing that we're talking about. So there would be an ad hominem attack. Calling people names, ad hominem attack. So that's a fallacy. You have all kinds of other fallacies. A straw man argument. It sets up an argument that basically, and politicians use this all the time, that if you, let's just say, we'll take Second Amendment, gun rights, whatever. If you believe that people should be able to own and purchase guns, then clearly you are for terrorist attacks and the killing of children in schools.
Clearly.
Now that is almost a straw man attack because no one is for that. No one is for that. But you connect these two things without a clear link, and you can easily knock this one down, and you can say, well, we shouldn't want school violence, and we shouldn't want people to be killing each other in terrorist attacks. Therefore, anybody who supports anything that has anything to do with gun rights is clearly that. Well, that's not a very good argument. That's a straw man argument. And there are lots of different kinds of fallacies. And when you start being able to identify those, then you can begin to think a little more critically.
Yes.
It's important.
Because
you can get moved. You can just be moved too much by emotion.
Right.
And you don't realize that you're manipulating. That when, yeah.
Yeah. No, and a lot of times those are things that draw out emotion.
Yeah.
And that's you said making a comment about my vest. Well, then it gets me mad, and then I become irrational.
Mm-hmm. And now you're off the topic.
He wins.
Red herrings are another big one. We're talking about something, and I say, well, what about that? And if you take the bait, which is what a herring is, to get the bloodhounds off the trail, let's throw the fish over there so they stop following me and go that way. So if I throw the red herring, it's like, Jonathan, and you're like, wow, let's go talk about that. I have got us off topic, and now I'm talking about something that I wanted you to talk about, which may be interesting and important, but it's not the argument at hand. That happens a lot of times too.
Oftentimes that happens, and then if it starts going the other way, you throw out another red herring.
Exactly. And you just keep
because that can happen as long as the conversation doesn't go the way you want to. Then but what about this? Oh, but what about this?
Yeah. It's the classic. You're looking at your kid's report card, and you see that unsatisfactory behavior in the classroom, or chit-chatting and talking to all your friends when you should be paying attention. And you address that with your kid, and they're like, but look at my grade that I got in math. I mean, I got 100%. Oh, you got 100%? What a good, you've been struggling with that. Got you totally off topic of the thing they didn't want you to see, to focus on something they did want you to see. Yeah, we're good manipulators. We don't even know sometimes that we're doing these fallacies, but we do. So when we want to form our conscience, we want to think critically. It's kind of how this conversation all got started, thinking critically. It's important to really think about thinking critically. Thinking about thinking. How do we know things? How do we think about things? How do we argue things? How do we do these things? You got to think about that. So today, I thought maybe we would just kind of start this discussion just talking about the church and the state in general. And what the roles of each of those are. Together? Yes, together. What the roles of each of those are and what part we play in each of those. So in America, as an example, we like to think about the separation of church and state. A lot of people today don't really remember why we have that separation of church and state. Do you remember why we have a separation of church and state, Jonathan?
You put me on the spot.
I know. Let's see how well you know your history.
Oh my gosh. There might be a lot of dead time.
So okay, we'll jump in.
Yeah, I will jump because I'm afraid to go astray.
How do
I don't
we
want
do
to look
this?
like a fool.
Well, and I could be totally off the mark here too. But it seems to me that the problem for many of the early immigrants was that church and state were interwoven in the old countries.
Correct.
And so you did not have the freedom to worship according to your conscience.
Right, no freedom of religion.
Exactly. And so when our laws were enacted, of course, the idea of the separation of church and state was that the state ought not to impose any, it's not going to oppose or enshrine, establish, the Establishment Clause, if you will, is not going to establish a religion by anything that it does or does not do, by act or omission. We're not going to establish a particular religion so that you have the freedom to worship however you want or not at all.
Right, so the government would not force you to partake in any religion or not partake in any religion.
Exactly, to leave you with the freedom of conscience. I think a lot of modern minds now want to flip that around, where originally the separation of church and state is to keep the state out of the church's business and not to impose a religion upon anyone. Because there are so many irreligious people today, they want to flip it around and argue that the church has no place in the state, that we cannot have the church commenting upon or lauding or condemning the acts of the state. That was never the intention of our founders and what our nation is built upon. That is problematic.
Or the intention of, I would even say, the church.
Of course, yeah. I mean,
the
absolutely.
church wants us. The church wants politicians to be Catholic. The church wants judges to be Catholic and to live out their faith in those roles, because the church wants its people to be in every facet of life.
The church wants her people to be involved in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want our people to be doing, I mean, it's not, we can't, we're living in the state. We have obligations to the state. We have a message. We have a gospel. We have good news. We have all of these things. We have a clear moral teaching and an access to the truth. And we want that to be seen and heard and known. So the church ought to participate in the state. In fact, the church is sort of the conscience of the state. And there should be, the church should annoy political leaders. I mean, we as an institution, as a people, should really be kind of annoying, because we're always going to be calling towards greater holiness, greater truth, greater goodness, all of these things that we should constantly be saying, well, that's good, but now what about this?
Right.
And that's not good, so how are we going to fix it? And what about these people? And how about this? So you can never rest on your laurels. You can't be comfortable.
No, unless there's nobody living in poverty and unless we're in heaven.
The second coming is going to solve all problems, but until then, we're constantly at work.
That's about it, yeah.
So we have a real obligation to continue to build a just society. And for most of us, that's going to be by participating in the electoral process, by exercising our democratic rights, and by contacting your senators or representatives or elected school board members or whatever to let them know what they are doing right or what they are doing wrong, to write those letters, to send those emails, to call them on the phone. But it's also exercising your right to vote. As I look ahead, who is going to best hold this position and bring about a more just society? I think that's important. Did you know, Jonathan, that I cannot run for public office?
I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Well, you're clergy.
I'm clergy. So I cannot. The Catholic Church has a law that clerics may not hold public office without a particular dispensation or permission. And the reason for that is because the church and the state, so let's look at these two entities here, and the church gathers the people of God together, and a minister, an ordained priest, bishop, priest, or deacon, the minister's job is to announce the gospel, to form consciences by sharing the truth and the teachings of the church and Jesus Christ, and to give the graces and the sacraments necessary for the people of God to be able to live their lives in the world. So my realm, as it were, is in the church. I minister directly to the people of God.
Right.
And the people of God, i.e. you and you, are to go out into the world where you live and to be the people of God there.
Right.
You minister to the world as I minister to you to give you everything you need, and you are sent out to go be a sign of the kingdom in the world.
Right. So that brings to mind and to call the role of all of the parishioners and all the lay people is to be that in the world. It's Father Jeff's job really is at the parish and in his parish boundaries, but he is, a lot of times we expect priests, oh, well, he's the priest, so he's the one that's supposed to be evangelizing, and he's the one that's supposed to be going out and doing these things, and there's only one of him. And there's still, we have 700, 800 families, something like that here at St. Charles. One priest for 700 families. Then you go into the whole area of our boundaries, parish boundaries, and those are still his flock.
There's a lot of people here.
And so, no, that is the role of the people, and we are called to live, and that is why your job is so important, because you're supposed to be that leader, that example, and we are supposed to, where you model Jesus for us, we're supposed to model how you model Jesus.
You model Jesus to others. So if you think about the model that Jesus provided, it was Jesus gathers his 12 around him, and in a sense, so there's Jesus, this one guy, but then he magnifies himself by gathering these 12 around them, and then they attract other disciples that now magnify the presence, and then they go out to the crowds, and so you see there's this flowing out from the center, and that's really the church is kind of structured that way too. That there's a complementary relationship between the mission of the ordained and the mission of the baptized and confirmed. That we work together. That we serve in different ways, building up the kingdom of God, building up. So it's not my job to go out and hold public office. The church should not take on the responsibilities of the state. That's not our role. That's not the church's role. It is that's a role for in the world, and those who are living in the world need to be able to bring the kingdom of peace and justice out there. And so that's my job is to help nourish that in here, so that you can go do it out there.
Yeah.
And I talked about this a couple weeks ago, that the church cannot tell you what you should or should not do. Like we're not the Borg, if you're a Star Trek person. We're not the Borg. We don't have a common hive mentality where there's only one way to think about something and one way to do something. That's not the way we operate. There are certain moral truths that are clearly right and wrong, good or bad. How those things are exercised and unfolded, and when you put various issues next to one another, some are going to rise up as more important, more prevalent, more prominent, whatever, and we have to be able to pick through all of those things.
Right.
And then when you look at a candidate, you're not going to have a perfect candidate on your ticket. And so how do I take candidate A supports 1, 5, 7, 9, and 11 in terms of my list of things that are important to our faith and morals, and candidate B supports 1, 2, 6, 9, and 11, but there's some clear gaps in both of them, and this one is contrary to these, and this one is contrary to these. They both have positives and they both have negatives. So now I have to do the job of weighing, and it's not just a counting and seeing how many, but it's a qualitative weighing.
Right.
It's a graded weighting system, or a weighted grading system, as it were. some of these points are going to weigh heavier than other points. And we'll get into that as the week goes on. But this is why it's not a simple, you should vote for X or you should vote for Y, and if you vote for X, you're a sinner, or if you vote for Y, you've made the only decision possible. I don't know that that's always the case. Sometimes it's more clear-cut than others. Sometimes it's really difficult.
Yeah. I like it when someone runs unopposed. Then it's very clear-cut.
Maybe.
It's either I vote for them or I don't vote for that position.
Then that's even when you have people opposing one another.
Yeah.
Sometimes you look at, and this is I think the real challenge for some of us, that you look at an office and you say, here are the two candidates that are presented, and this one has a grievous moral deficiency. This one has a grievous moral deficiency. I don't feel that either one I can support.
In good conscience.
In good conscience. And so I'm going to have to leave that office blank. I can't vote for either one of you. I cannot give you my support. And we really have to, we can't just do that carefree or laissez-faire or whatever. If you are not going to vote for a particular office, there really has to be a good moral reason for doing so. Not just, this decision is hard and I don't want to. I don't want to think about it. That's not a good choice.
No.
Or to back away from the election entirely and say, because I don't like either presidential candidate, I am just not going to vote at all this year. Well, there's like 20 other things to vote for on that ballot. That is, I would say, immoral to skip the duty of voting. You know, this is an interesting thing, speaking of immoral. I've never had someone come into the confessional and say, and they probably should, Father, I did not vote this year. Because I would say that's a sin for somebody who participates and lives in society. If you are benefiting from the social structures of society, if you are receiving or plan to receive Social Security, if you are protected by police and healthcare, if you have all of the education systems that are helping to support you and your families, and then you do not participate in the political process, you are a leech on society, and that is grave. That is sinful. That is sinful.
I was thinking, but Father, what if I'm uninformed and I don't want to make an uninformed vote? Your duty as a citizen and receiving all of those things, as a Christian, is to be informed. Do a little bit of research. You can do it in as little as 30 minutes.
It is so much easier today with the internet. Open up the internet and look people. It doesn't take that long.
And if you're watching this, you have the internet, so.
Yeah, but that is a real thing, that there is a moral obligation. We have a moral obligation to participate in the political process and not just to be, again, it goes back to the Lord who says, hot or cold, don't be lukewarm and sit on the fence.
And I hate to break it to him, but the local elections are going to have a lot bigger impact a lot of times than the presidential one.
I will say it over and over and over and over and over again. Do your research on your school board positions. Because those are the ones that are going to dictate the policy for the school, for our young people, and begin forming minds for the future. And if they are, if they've got agendas and all sorts of things that are contrary to moral teaching, then it forms a generation that is going to be it's going to be bad. So that's I think that's one of the most important tickets or ballot issues, election slots,
positions,
whatever,
something
on the ballot races. One of the most important races on the ballot that you pay attention to those school board positions, because those are super duper important.
It is scary to see. Even already, you have middle schoolers coming up and they have opinions on some things, and it's scary to see what comes out of their mouths.
What's been taught and what the culture is at the school. So that's an important thing. Even if you send your kids to private school or parochial or Catholic school or whatever, it is important because we live in a society where what that public education is going to form and mold the minds of the next generation.
Because even if you look at how many kids go to private school versus public school, even if all the private school kids were formed and were perfectly great consciences,
which
they're not.
Correct.
The public school far outweighs it. You know, Scott has, I don't know, 1,000 kids maybe.
Sure.
The public school has a couple thousand.
Yeah, 1,000.
And that's just one of them.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that's just one of them. So it's just don't
pay attention to those things. Look these things up. Pray about it. Consider it. If you had an early ballot, or if you have one that you're completing because you want to sit down, that's what I do. I sit down with my ballot and my iPad, and I just kind of, okay, let me look at these two people. Look them up. Look them up. I think there was only one or two where I couldn't find anything on the people or the person, and so I did not vote for that race because I could not make an informed decision.
And there are some that are like that.
And if you cannot make an informed decision, if you do not know, and there's no one you trust that can give you advice on that, then you may have to leave that blank. So we'll get kind of more into the details of now what should I be weighing in my heart as I approach these various candidates and issues, and how do I exercise that responsibility? We will talk about that as the week goes on.
As you can tell from this show, it could get a little muddled, and it could get a little bit just everywhere.
So we'll spread it out over the course of the week, and we'll see where it goes, and it might help you out, it might not help at all. It might just make things even more murky. Bye.
Bye.